Next up, we have Ari Banerjee. Sorry, I asked you earlier. Consumer 51, who's also a sponsor, so please give a warm welcome.
Thank you, everyone. And I know I have an unenviable job here of standing between you and the party. So, in fact, party would have been one of the words I would have shown, but it would have definitely been an inspiring word. But this is my first time at the Expression Engine conference. I have been a lifelong marketer. I have really written a lot of ads for different companies, Lexus, Walmart, McDonald's, to name a few, and I still do. And so when I was thinking about this conference, one of the things that I was wondering is, what can I bring to the conference that it would be unique? And I know several people here are programmers. They work within the code base or are running businesses. And I thought, I have the unique experience of being in this field of studying language and being a student of language and how we use language in everyday life, that maybe I can share that perspective and spark some conversation here. So just by show of hands, how many people in this room are developers? Anyone? Okay, cool. And business owners? Okay, perfect, awesome. All right, excellent, good to know. So we'll keep this fairly conversational to give you a little background on myself. So I grew up in a family where my parents came from different linguistic backgrounds. So even just having my grandparents in a room, I had to play the interpreter because they didn't know their languages. So from a very early age, I was fascinated by languages and how languages bring people together. So as I started my career, I was a copywriter, then went on to craft messages, both internal and external, for different CEOs. As I worked multiple jobs, I worked on the agency side and then on the corporate side, and then came to leading teams on the creative side. And one of the things that is really fascinating is words that we use and how we make those word choices. I've always found from experience that when I talk to people, the words that they use really give us a glimpse into their thoughts and what they're thinking. So when you think about anyone, and I've traveled the country, we have clients out in Indiana, we have clients in Santa Fe, in Florida, and just meeting people from different facets and different walks of life, it's a fascinating experience, and just seeing how they express themselves. So in this presentation, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on saying, this is what you should be using, or this is what you could be using. I'm going to present some scenarios and just try to focus your attention on thinking about some everyday words that you're already using, and then try to get that attention. And so the next time you're in a conversation, hopefully you'll be listening to what that word means, because it's an output of the thought process that's going on in someone's mind. So with that, let me tell you a little bit about where these words matter. This is something I picked up from Shep Hyken, and if you don't know him, he talks about customer service. So this is one of the quotes I really love from his presentations. So he said, recognize that every interaction you have is an opportunity to make a positive impact on others. And I wanted to put that there because, coming from a copywriter, you might think I'm trying to tell you, use these words and this will manipulate someone. That's not what I'm trying to, share with you, but I want you to think about the words that are being used, because that can truly be transformational, because the words are really a manifestation of a mindset. So when you focus on the words, that could actually change the mindset. So with that, let's dive in. So just 5 words. Actually, I have 6, so you'll get a 20% bonus. So. So the first one is we. This is something that is a really underutilized word. How many times have you sat in a presentation and you've heard someone say, I did this thing, I did this banner, and someone say, I did it. There's always that temptation to take credit, right? So using we when, or using we instead of I, and there are some instances where we should use I. There's this old joke in the sales world where every time you land a deal, the guy goes, hey, I got the deal. And when it doesn't come through, they said, oh, we didn't make it. So it's let's flip that mindset of I versus we, right? But there are instances when using I can be powerful as well. So for example, if you think about I have a dream, right? And how that speaks to the dream not being a dream that's shared by everyone, right? Versus, yes, we can. So the next time you're in a situation, if you're listening to either your colleagues or clients, anyone else, in that conversation, it's key to listen to what are they saying. Is it I versus we? And in what context? And anyone who's an individual contributor, I would welcome you to use the word we more often, even if you are in an individual contributor capacity, because using we, even if you are the only person doing it, really gives you permission to represent the voice of a team, to speak for a collective. And what your client hears then is that you're not alone, you're backed by other people on the team. So it's a really powerful word, again, often underutilized, especially in client meetings, and just making that switch from I to we is hugely powerful. You have no idea how many times clients would listen to that, and they know that, okay, this is a team. Also for solopreneurs, you hear presidential candidates go out and say, we are doing this, even though they're the ones who are going to be president, right? So powerful word. Pay some attention. The next one is can. Again, another underutilized word, but it's so powerful. Just think about it. You ask me a question and I say we can versus I say we can't. The chemical reaction in your brain totally changes. So when someone comes in and says, even if it's a very unreasonable request, and we've had it, clients come to us and they say, hey, we have this event coming up, we need a website to go up, we need all this marketing, everything has to happen in 10 days, and this is what we can do. The temptation is to say, are you kidding me? No, we can't. But resist the temptation and say, to start off with the positive and say, yes, we can do it, it's going to cost you extra to do this. That's a powerful way to steer that conversation from what would have been totally impossible. Now you've said, yes, we can. So your client understands that and says, okay, great. Now I have a partner who's willing to go the distance with me, and they need some resources. So let me. They've said yes. Now can we, trade resources? That's another powerful word. Again, think about when you're using can or can't and what context. This is probably one of my favorite words, especially in the terms of management, because it turns a verdict or a decision into a rationale. And now I'm giving reason for why I'm doing something. And again, goes back to just being transparent and accountable. So we just had someone who applied for a sales position, and during the course of the interviews and all of that, had a few follow-ups, and then we had this conversation where I had to break the bad news to him and say, I'm sorry, we're not going to be hiring you. And I could have left it at that. But then I did say, because for this role, it has to be a consultative role, and the 3 follow-ups that I got from you all said the same thing, is I'm just following up on this role. And you could have instead done something else, like say, oh, I see digital marketing is on the rise, and I think this role looks promising. Or you could have given me something else, some new update, and you didn't do that. And because of that reason, we're unable to pursue or with this application. But in the future, if you come back, this is the expectation of the role. So it really helps that communication be super clear. Once you put because, now they are trained to thinking about what could I have done differently. Or if something didn't work out the way people expected, what is the reason behind it? Just humans, we want that closure in our lives. So because is a word that brings that closure, and I think a lot of people, especially in today's fast-paced world, it's often something that's skipped, because we don't go into the reasons for the message. And then this one's a powerful word, feel. So again, feeling, again, underutilized. We live in a world where things are fast and furious, and oftentimes clients will come and say, oh, you didn't do this, or what happened to this? You will have colleagues who say, I asked you to do this job, or I asked you to set up this code here and you didn't do it. Using the word feel can be really powerful in those circumstances and be non-confrontational, because I can say, look, I feel you're not listening to me. Changes it from being an accusation to something that's about me now and how I feel, versus just saying, hey, you didn't do it, you don't care about me. Again, thinking about just that one accusation to say, you don't care about me, to say, I feel that you don't care about me, changes the whole conversation. And that is another word that is underutilized in management, because I think a lot of people in today's world, in corporate America particularly, feel like feelings or emotions are something to be left out of the boardroom, to be left out of companies. And so they just go with, this is the way I want it, or this is what you've got to do. Whereas I think bringing feelings into the discussion to say, I feel a certain way, or I'm sorry that you feel a certain way, is a great way to have a constructive conversation, where now we're talking about feelings and not people. So that would be the fourth word here. And like I said, let's go with the bonus, the yes, no. Okay, so here's a fun fact. 100% of regrets that people have are because they swapped one word for the other. 100%, right? I said yes to the coffee. You know, they popped the question. I said yes. Should have said no. Brexit. I should have not said no or yes. No matter what the scale is, about 100% of all regrets are because it comes down to this. And yes and no are two words in our language, any language, that are binary. But if you think about life, is it binary in circumstances? Very rarely is life binary, right? So in thinking about when you get to that fork where you have to have a yes or no decision, that's something that I personally think about a lot, and I'm not quick to just say yes or no. Again, just like the Brexit thing, or someone says, "Hey, let's go buy a house." Yeah, no, sure. We had the talk about accessibility in the morning, right? So we say, "Hey, everyone should be in favor of accessibility, right?" And if the answer is yes, and then the next thing I say is, "Except it's going to cost everyone $20,000 more." It's not a binary decision, and the yes or no answer forces us to think of every problem as a binary choice. So whether you're buying a house, hiring an employee, letting go of an employee, taking a project, giving a discount, a lot of these questions are not binary questions, and therefore a binary answer is often not sufficient. And this is something that I just want everyone to just think about a little bit, and times when you've really thought about things. But again, just the flip side of that, 100% of all the good things that happen because we use these correctly. Saying yes, the happiness in life comes from using yes and no correctly. And the biggest thing I feel the biggest mistake that people make is they'll say a weak yes when they should have a strong no. Or they'll just say the opposite sometimes, where then they go like, "Oh, I was offered a job in Google when Google was a startup, and I said no because they had no money." So those are some things to think about. I think the yes and no. So just to summarize, here are the words. So we can, because, feel, yes and no. And then I just want to invite any of you to have anything else that you want to add to the conversation that you've seen play out because just like code, language is really the code of business. So the words we use tell people how to process things, and in return also are a manifestation of how we are processing things. So any questions or comments?
What about could you do something versus can you do something? Like particularly if it's a coworker or an employee.
Yeah. That's a very good. That happens all the time, right? Could you help me out here versus can you help me out here? And
we hear can and maybe you kind of imply could, but they are different words.
Right. Yeah, and in that situation, I think if you lead with could you help me out, you're giving the control to the other person, which may actually be a good thing, because they maybe they can or they cannot, but it's less a question about their capability and more about are you willing to help me out, and framing it that way. I think that leads to a more constructive dialogue, having that respect.
I was just about to say the same thing, that could has more optimistic approach towards the person that you already can do it, but would you be willing to do it or not? So you say that.
Yeah, I think that's a. Any other questions or comments?
The feel sticks out to me because trying to get my thought right here. It's like if you feel something, it can't really be disputed.
It cannot be disputed.
You could say like, well, it was 80 degrees yesterday, versus like like I feel it was 80 degrees yesterday.
Right.
So feel is on your list is like you can't debate it, and I'm wondering if that's like unique about feel compared to the other four.
It does frame the conversation a certain way when you use the word feel, because now you're not, again, going back, accusing or saying things a certain way. But of course, there are times when the word feel should not be used. Like I just went through a business. I think Marcus talked about this SBA program. I went to a similar program where I had a CPA asking me, "What do you think of your books? How's your accounting going?" And I said, "I feel like it's going well." but that's where, when you dig down, that feeling is, you can't say I feel at that point. You have to have the numbers there. But in a situation where we are having a conversation or a confrontation, or it's a great word to use to de-escalate things, because no one can argue with how you feel. So if I say, I feel I'm being treated unfairly in a discussion, I'm not accusing that you're treating me unfairly, but then that opens up a path for the conversation to move forward rather than get stuck there. So yeah, it's a good point.
On the feeling note, I'm kind of looking at the words and thinking, specifically in terms of the increasing ROI, and like some of those words, it's kind of obvious how you would do it, and you could use the word "we" in your marketing instead of "I," and it kind of builds kind of an image in the customer's mind about what service they're going to get, or that there will be somebody else around if you go on vacation or whatever. So that one kind of makes sense. But I'm feeling like, how would you use the word "feel" specifically to kind of, if you're looking to try and increase your ROI, can you give like an example of what sort of a context you would use that, like maybe by presenting an opposite, or?
I think there are a lot of situations when you have a client who's complaining about something, and to use the word "feel" in that context, where you could get into maybe nobody did anything wrong, and they're just being unreasonable. And they're unreasonable, but like if you just say, I feel, that there is some miscommunication here. So so that would have been revenue you would have lost if you did not, if you just said no. You're just being, you're not being straightforward, or so that's where I think the field comes into play. It also is in the context of any discussion, talking about a contract renegotiation, to say, I feel like we've done a lot of good work for you, Mr. and Mrs. Client. Would you agree with that? It's a good way to, again, advance the conversation. You're not saying, hey, we were charging you $5,000 a month, can you give us $10,000 a month now? To say, I feel like we doubled your sale, brought some value to you. It's a nice way to just start that conversation about performance. So that's, in that context, I think field could be a very powerful word to use. Good point.
So is there any online resource or a book that you would recommend which allows you to understand which is a better word to use? For an example, let's say I did this because, right? Sounds like, and I'm defending myself, wherein I say that reason why I did is sounding like an positive side kind of thing. So whether because is the right word or a reason is the right word, kind of like you say that based on the person that they uses the word, you can try and understand from where they are coming from. So is there any resource or something how do you?
Yeah, I'm sure there would be lots of resources online, and I think the point you were making again is that may be more of a stylistic thing, but goes to the same essence of someone providing a reason to say, whatever it is, this is not possible because it requires X, or this may not be the best choice because of this reason, or to flip it around and say the reason that this may not work is so and so. So I think it goes to that essence of what is that word. And there are lots of I'm sure there are lots of resources out there, and just writing copy. We can there are times when we run tests to see, okay, what wording works better versus. So there have been, to give you an example, you could put up an ad that says purchase now or buy now, and something that says learn more. And in some situations, we've actually seen learn more perform better than a buy now. So conventional wisdom would suggest, hey, buy now, it's got an active, it's a verb, you're doing the buy. How is learn more getting us higher sales than buy now? And the answer to that simply maybe just the user is not prepared to buy now, they're prepared to learn more. So let them learn more. Now you've given them the control, you're respecting the user, and you're not telling them do this right now. You're telling them, okay, if you want to learn more, it's an invitation, and then they go in and actually make the purchase. So in the digital world, using Expression Engine, using the tools we have, we can very easily make those decisions when it comes to actual campaigns. And you can actually study and see how that works. And then the context that I'm kind of presenting this is somewhat marketing, but also day-to-day. And in those situations, you could use these things and then see how does it work? Is it really helpful, or how was that conversation received? Because you're going to get that feedback from the user or from the other person in the conversation. But yeah, good question. Anything else?
I feel it was a great presentation.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, and I truly appreciate this opportunity to share the time with you, and I'm immensely grateful for that. So with that, I think the word is party, I guess, is next on our agenda. Thank you, everyone.